You never think the night before your wedding will be the moment everything you believed about love shatters. But that's exactly what happened to me. My name is Claire Parker. I'm 26, and until a week ago, I thought I was about to marry the love of my life, Ethan Miller. We'd been together for 3 years, had twin boys together, and after everything we'd survived, the surprise pregnancy, the sleepless nights, the chaotic first year of parenting, I truly believed nothing could shake us. Turns out I was wrong. The day before our wedding had been magical, at least on the surface. My parents had flown in from out of state. The venue was decorated with soft white lights and fresh peonies, my favorite flower, and Ethan's family kept saying how perfect everything looked. I spent the morning doing last-minute errands, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. After all, this wasn't just a wedding. It was the moment I thought would cement our family together. A promise that the chaos of the past few years was worth it. By evening, tradition had us spending the night apart. Ethan stayed at his parents' house just a few blocks away, while I stayed home with our boys. We FaceTimed right after dinner, both of us tired but grinning like kids. He told me how much he loved me, how tomorrow would be the happiest day of his life. "Sleep well," he whispered, voice low and tender. "Tomorrow we start forever." I remember smiling through tears, whispering back, "Forever." If only I'd known what was about to happen next. The call didn't end when it should have. Ethan has this bad habit. He taps the screen lightly, thinks he's hung up, but the call stays connected. Normally I'd hang up for him, but this time I hesitated. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was fate. Whatever it was, I stayed on the line. That's when I heard his father's voice. "Was that Claire?" his dad asked, his tone casual. "Yeah," Ethan muttered, except his voice didn't sound casual at all. It sounded heavy, like something was weighing him down. "You still feel the same way you did 2 days ago?" his father pressed. "Yes," Ethan replied quietly. My stomach dropped. "Same way about what?" And then his mother's voice joined in. "Ethan, listen to me. You need to go through with this wedding, no matter what you're feeling." "I can't just fake it forever," he snapped suddenly, his voice cracking. "Do you even hear yourselves? You're forcing me into something I'm not ready for." Forcing him? My chest tightened. What was he talking about? "You don't have a choice," his father said sharply. "Either you marry her and do right by those kids, or we cut you out of the will. You want to throw away everything we've built for you?" There was silence, so heavy I swear I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. "Dad, that's not fair," Ethan said finally, his voice shaking. "No one cares what I want, not Claire, not you, not Mom. Ever since she got pregnant, I've been shoved into one life-altering decision after another. I wasn't ready to be a dad, and now I'm not ready to be a husband either." Those words, "I wasn't ready to be a dad," hit me like a punch to the gut. My hands trembled so badly, I almost dropped the phone. I wanted to believe I was misunderstanding, that maybe I'd misheard. But then he kept talking. "She wouldn't even consider getting rid of the pregnancy," Ethan continued bitterly. "I begged her, but she wouldn't listen, and now I'm stuck. Everyone expects me to play the hero, but I never wanted this. Not the kids, not the wedding, none of it." My entire body went cold. His mother's voice came through next, stern and scolding. "Ethan, enough. You think you can just run away? You've already disgraced this family by having children out of wedlock. The least you can do now is marry her and salvage what's left of your reputation. She deserves someone who actually loves her," Ethan yelled. "She deserves stability," his father shot back. "You think life is about feelings? Grow up, marry her, be a father, and stop being selfish." There was a loud slam, maybe a door, and then silence. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt crushed, like someone had dropped a 100-pound weight on me. In one moment, everything I thought I knew about Ethan, about us, came crumbling down. The man I loved, the father of my children, had been lying to me, smiling through gritted teeth, pretending, all because his parents wanted to save face. And I was about to marry him. I hung up the phone, hands trembling so violently I could barely press the button. My reflection stared back at me in the dark screen, wide eyes, pale skin, lips pressed tight to keep from sobbing. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, frozen, trying to make sense of it. How could he hold me every night, kiss our sons goodnight, talk about forever, and secretly resent the life we built together? How long had he been faking it? How much of our love story had been a lie? The questions swirled around me like a storm, each one louder than the last, until I couldn't hear anything else, not even my own heartbeat. When the tears finally came, they were unstoppable. Silent, gut-wrenching sobs that left me gasping for air. My hands clutched at the blanket on my lap like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. I thought about calling my mom, my best friend, anyone. But I didn't. Not yet, because deep down, I knew what I had to do. And saying it out loud would make it real. I wasn't going to marry Ethan. Not tomorrow. Not ever. The realization was terrifying and freeing all at once. Terrifying because I had no idea what came next. Freeing because for the first time in months, I wasn't pretending either. I walked into the nursery, where our boys were sleeping peacefully, their tiny chests rising and falling with each breath. I stood there for a long time, tears dripping silently onto the carpet, and whispered to them, "I'm so sorry, but I'm not letting you grow up in a lie." Then, I started packing. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Ethan's voice echoing in my head. I wasn't ready to be a dad. I never wanted this. By sunrise, my decision was made. I wasn't going to marry him. But it wasn't just about calling off the wedding. I couldn't stay in that house, in that life built on lies. I needed to leave, now. I moved quickly, almost on autopilot. Packed a suitcase with the bare essentials, clothes for me and the boys, diapers, bottles, a few toys to keep them calm. I didn't even think about the wedding dress hanging in the closet or the carefully wrapped gifts piled in the living room. None of it mattered anymore. By 7 a.m., I strapped the twins into their car seats. They stirred, but didn't cry. Thank God. My heart pounded as I drove past Ethan's parents' house, where I imagined him still asleep, blissfully unaware of what I'd overheard. Part of me wanted to pound on the door, scream every truth into his face, demand to know how long he'd been pretending. But another part of me, the bigger part, knew there was no point. When someone tells you who they really are, you believe them. I drove 2 hours out of town to a roadside motel, the kind of place where nobody asks questions. The neon vacancy sign buzzed faintly as I carried my sons inside, their tiny heads resting on my shoulders. I locked the door behind us and finally let myself fall apart. The sobs came in waves, loud, ugly, uncontrollable. I hated him. I loved him. I hated that I still loved him. And underneath all that anger, there was this gnawing fear. What now? The first call came at noon. Ethan. I didn't answer. Then his mother. Ignored. By the time I put the boys down for their nap, there were 15 missed calls and 6 voicemails. I deleted them all without listening. I couldn't handle his excuses, not yet. But when my phone buzzed again, this time with a text from my mom, I hesitated. "Sweetheart, where are you?" Ethan's family is panicking. The wedding starts in 4 hours. I stared at the screen, hands trembling. 4 hours. By now, the florist would be setting up the peonies I'd begged for. The caterer would be prepping the appetizers I'd obsessed over for weeks. Guests, family, friends, people who'd flown across the country were probably checking into hotels, dressing up, expecting to see us say, "I do." And I was sitting on a lumpy motel bed with a diaper bag and 2 sleeping babies, wondering how my life had unraveled overnight. I typed out a reply, deleted it, typed again. Finally, I sent the truth. "I'm not coming, Mom. I heard everything last night. I'll explain later. Please don't tell them where I am." Her response came fast. "Mom, what did you hear? Claire, are you safe?" Safe. The word made me laugh bitterly. Physically, yes. Emotionally, I was drowning. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not yet. By evening, word had spread. My phone lit up nonstop. Texts from friends, cousins, even coworkers I hadn't invited. Some were worried, some were nosy, and a few were angry. Apparently, Ethan's parents were telling everyone I'd gotten cold feet, that I'd humiliated their son in front of both families, that I'd left him at the altar. The audacity nearly made me scream. Cold feet? No. This wasn't nerves. This was betrayal. Still, I stayed silent. The less I said, the better. Let them spin their story. I had the truth and the twins to protect. The second night in the motel was worse than the first. The boys were fussy, sensing my anxiety. I paced the room for hours, bouncing them in my arms, whispering lullabies through tears. By 3 a.m., I collapsed into the creaky bed with both of them curled against me, exhausted beyond words. That's when the pounding on the door started. "Claire?" Ethan's voice, My blood turned to ice. "Claire, I know you're in there. Please, open the door." I froze, clutching my sons tighter. How had he found me? Did my mom tell him? Did someone track my car? My mind raced as he kept pounding. "Please, just talk to me. I'm losing my mind. I can explain everything." Explain? What was there to explain? I'd heard his words with my own ears. He hadn't been tricked, he hadn't been drunk, he'd been honest for the first time in months. I stayed silent. After a long pause, he spoke again, softer this time. "I love you, Claire. I love our boys. I panicked, that's all. Please don't throw us away." Tears stung my eyes. I wanted to scream back, "You already threw us away," but I bit my tongue. The boys stirred in my arms, whimpering, and I rocked them gently, praying he'd leave. Eventually he did. But not before sliding a note under the door. "I'm sorry. Please let me fix this." For 3 days I stayed hidden. My parents brought food, friends checked in quietly. Meanwhile, Ethan and his family unleashed a storm of calls, texts, even social media posts painting me as unstable. Then came the kicker. A message from Ethan's father. "If you try to keep the children from Ethan, we'll see you in court." My heart stopped. Court? Custody battles? Suddenly, this wasn't just about heartbreak. It was about survival, about protecting my sons from people who saw them as leverage in some twisted family drama. By the end of that week, something inside me hardened. I wasn't the same woman who'd said yes to Ethan's proposal, or even the one who'd cried in the motel bathroom 3 nights ago. I was a mother, and I was done being quiet. I packed up, left the motel, and drove straight to my parents' house. With their help, I found a lawyer the very next morning. It was time to fight, not for revenge, but for freedom. I didn't know what Ethan's next move would be. Would he beg me to come back? Would he drag me to court? Would his wealthy parents try to buy their way into my sons' lives? All I knew was this: whatever storm was coming, I was ready. Because for the first time in weeks, I felt something stronger than heartbreak. I felt resolve. The first time I saw Ethan after I left wasn't at some quiet coffee shop like I'd imagined. It was in a courtroom. Not for custody. Not yet. This was his family's emergency hearing for visitation rights, a legal maneuver they'd filed less than 2 weeks after the wedding fiasco. It was a power play, pure and simple, and the moment I stepped into that marble-floored hallway, I felt it. His parents were already there. Impeccably dressed, radiating quiet wealth. Ethan's mother, Margaret, sat rigid in a navy suit, lips pressed so tightly they'd turned white. His father, Charles, stood beside her like a statue, expensive watch glinting under the fluorescent lights. Ethan himself looked different. Hollow-eyed, his hair was unkempt, suit wrinkled like he hadn't slept since the night I left. When he saw me carrying the twins, his face crumpled. For a split second, I almost saw the man I'd fallen in love with. But then Margaret's hand clamped on his arm, guiding him back, and the softness vanished. The hearing wasn't even about custody, technically. Their lawyer, a silver-haired man with a voice like smooth gravel, argued that Ethan's parents had a right to see their grandchildren, that I was being vindictive, emotional, and unreasonable. I wanted to laugh. Vindictive? These people didn't even want me in the family until Ethan's inheritance was on the line. Now suddenly, they were playing the doting grandparent card? My lawyer, bless her, stayed calm. She pointed out that the twins were barely a year old, that I'd been their primary caregiver since birth, and that I wasn't preventing Ethan himself from visitation. I was only protecting my kids from his family's manipulation. When she said that word, manipulation, Margaret's head snapped toward me so fast I swore I heard her neck crack. The judge didn't rule that day. He said both sides would present more evidence in 2 weeks, which, in legal terms, was basically an invitation for war. Outside the courthouse, the confrontation I'd been dreading finally came. "Claire," Ethan's voice stopped me in my tracks. He looked desperate, almost pleading. "Please, talk to me, without lawyers, without them." I glanced at his parents hovering behind him, their expressions a mix of disdain and calculation. "Without them?" I said coldly. "You mean the people pulling your strings?" His jaw tightened. "It's not like that." "Oh, it's exactly like that," I shot back. "You didn't even want these kids. You didn't want to marry me. The only reason you stayed was because they threatened to cut you off. Do you realize how insane that sounds?" Margaret stepped forward, voice sharp as glass. "Watch your tone, young lady. You have no idea what sacrifices our family has made for you." I laughed. Couldn't help it. Sacrifices? You mean the wedding you pushed on us? The inheritance you dangled like a leash around your son's neck? Those sacrifices? Her face flushed crimson. "You're ungrateful." "Ungrateful?" My voice rose. "For what? For being lied to? For raising twins on my own while your son complained I ruined his life?" Ethan flinched at that. For once, he didn't defend himself. He just stood there, silent. Charles finally spoke, his voice calm but cold. "You're making a mistake, Claire. Whatever anger you feel toward Ethan, don't punish the rest of us. We will be in those boys' lives, one way or another." The threat hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. Back at my parents' house, the reality of what I was up against hit me hard. This wasn't just Ethan. It was his entire family, a family with money, lawyers, and influence. People who weren't used to hearing no. I spent nights poring over paperwork, documenting everything. Text messages, phone calls, the voicemail from Ethan's mom practically begging him to marry me for appearances. My lawyer said it could help. "Courts like evidence," she reminded me. "Show the pattern of coercion, and you'll have leverage." Leverage, God, I hated that word. This wasn't a negotiation. These were my children. But I learned fast. Family court isn't about who's right, it's about who can prove their version of right. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get messier, I got a message that nearly knocked me flat, from Ethan. No lawyers, no parents, just him. "Can we meet? Alone. Please, there's something I need to tell you, something about my family." My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity gnawed at me. What could possibly be left to confess? I agreed to meet at a quiet park during the twins' nap time. He was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench under the shade of an old oak. He looked broken. "Claire," he started, voice low. "I know I've messed up. I know I don't deserve another chance, but you need to understand something." I crossed my arms, wary. "Go on." "My parents." He hesitated, glancing around like someone might be listening. "They've been planning this for months, not just the wedding, not just pushing me to stay. They never cared about us. They cared about what the twins represent." I frowned. "Represent?" "Image," he said bitterly. "Legacy. They're obsessed with appearances. A perfect family, perfect heirs. The idea of me being a single dad, or you raising them without the Lawson name, it's humiliating to them. That's why they're fighting so hard. It's not about me. It's about control." I stared at him, heart pounding. "So what? You're suddenly the good guy in all this?" "No," he said quickly. "I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm saying I want out, from them, from all of it. But I don't know how." For a moment, I almost believed him. Almost. Then I remembered the late-night phone call, the lies, the inheritance hanging over every choice he'd made. "Then figure it out," I said quietly. "Because I'm done saving you." I turned to leave. "Claire, wait," his voice cracked, raw. "I love you. I love our boys. Please don't shut me out." I stopped, just long enough to look back. "Prove it," I said. "Not with words, with actions." And I walked away. What I didn't know, what I couldn't know, was that Ethan's next action would blow everything up. Because less than a week later, I'd wake up to a knock on my door and a subpoena demanding full custody of my children. The subpoena felt like a punch to the gut. Full custody. Not visitation, not joint parenting, full. And the kicker? The petition wasn't filed by Ethan. It was filed by his parents. Apparently, Margaret and Charles Lawson were arguing that I was unfit to raise the twins. Unfit. Me, the person who'd been feeding them, rocking them to sleep, surviving sleepless nights while Ethan complained about losing his social life. I didn't even have time to process the insult before my lawyer called. "Claire, this isn't just about custody. The Lawsons are leveraging something big." "What does that mean?" I demanded. She hesitated. "It means they're about to drag every secret they can find into court." 2 nights later, I found out what she meant. A thick envelope appeared on my doorstep, no return address. Inside, photos. Dozens of them. At first glance, they looked like old family portraits. Ethan, smiling stiffly beside his parents at charity galas, ribbon cuttings, campaign fundraisers, but tucked between the glossy prints was something else, something darker. A document. Handwritten, dated 4 months ago. It was a trust amendment, and in clean, elegant script, it spelled out exactly what the Lawsons stood to lose if Ethan didn't marry me. Inheritance to be dispersed only upon presentation of a stable family unit, marriage, and legitimate heirs. In other words, me and our twins weren't just part of their legacy. We were the ticket to their fortune. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the note scribbled in the margin. Ethan's handwriting. Tell Claire whatever she wants to hear. We just need 2 years to secure the trust. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the paper. 2 years. 2 years of pretending. 2 years of playing happy family just so he could cash in. The late-night phone call I'd overheard suddenly made sickening sense. The proposal, the timing, every sweet word he'd whispered during sleepless nights with the twins, all of it, calculated. I wasn't just blindsided, I was played. By the time the custody hearing rolled around, I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was furious. The courtroom was packed, family, friends, even a few reporters eager for a peek at the Lawson scandal. Margaret sat primly in her pearls, pretending to dab her eyes. Charles whispered to their lawyer. Ethan wouldn't even meet my gaze. The judge called for opening statements. Their lawyer painted me as unstable, overwhelmed, still recovering from postpartum challenges. He hinted at my modest income, my lack of family wealth, my impulsiveness for calling off the wedding. Then came my lawyer's turn. And we were ready. When I took the stand, I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just handed the judge the envelope. Your Honor, my lawyer said calmly, this is proof that this custody petition is not about the children's well-being, but about financial gain. Gasps rippled through the courtroom as the judge flipped through the documents. Margaret's face drained of color. Charles leaned forward, jaw tight, the judge's brow furrowed. Mr. Lawson, he addressed Ethan's father, would you like to explain why this trust document explicitly ties inheritance to this woman's marriage to your son? Margaret stammered something about family values. Charles muttered about ensuring stability. But then, the real twist dropped. I hadn't planned on calling Ethan to the stand, but when the judge asked if he wanted to respond, he surprised everyone by standing up, and what he said shattered the room. They made me lie, Ethan said quietly. The trust, the inheritance, all of it. They said if I didn't marry Claire, I'd lose everything. And when she found out, they told me to fight for custody, not because they cared about me or the twins, but because they wanted control. Over the money, over everything. He turned toward his parents, voice breaking. You didn't care if I was happy. You didn't care if Claire was happy. You just wanted heirs to put in your Christmas cards, Margaret gasped. Ethan. No, his voice cracked like thunder. You ruined everything. You turned me into someone I don't even recognize. Silence. Absolute silence. The judge called for a recess. People whispered. Reporters scribbled. My parents hugged me, stunned. In the hallway, Ethan approached me, eyes red, hands shaking. I'm done, he whispered. I'm done with them. Claire, I'm so sorry. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because even as he stood there, confessing, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from an unknown number. You think Ethan told you everything? He didn't. Check the folder under his name at the city bank. Do it before you forgive him. I stared at the screen, pulse hammering. Another secret? Another lie? When I looked up, Ethan was still there, waiting, hope flickering in his eyes. But for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted answers or if I was ready to hear them. The night before the verdict, I barely slept. The twins were tucked safely at my parents' house, but every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the window, sent my mind spiraling back to court. I kept replaying Ethan's confession, how he'd exposed his own parents, how he'd finally broken free of their grip. For 3 years, I dreamed of that moment. But instead of relief, I felt hollow. Was his apology real, or just another performance? When dawn broke, I had my answer. Not because of Ethan, but because of me. I wasn't here to fix him. I wasn't here to mend a broken family or salvage their reputation. I was here for my sons, and I would walk into that courtroom ready to burn every bridge if that's what it took. The courthouse buzzed with whispers as we entered. Reporters lingered near the back, hungry for an update on the Lawson scandal. Margaret sat rigid, pearl necklace gleaming, lips pressed into a thin line. Charles avoided my gaze entirely. Ethan, surprisingly, sat alone, 2 rows back from his parents. No tie, no smug smile, just quiet. When the judge called for closing statements, my lawyer stood tall. Your Honor, this case was never about the children's well-being. It was about money, control, power. My client has raised these twins since birth, without relying on the Lawsons' wealth. Meanwhile, We've submitted documented proof that the family sought custody only after tying the children's existence to an inheritance trust. This is coercion disguised as concern, and it ends today. The Lawsons' lawyer sputtered something about ensuring stability and family legacy, but the judge barely looked up from the trust documents. When he finally spoke, the room went silent. This court finds that full custody of the minors shall be awarded to Claire Bennett. The Lawson family's petition is hereby denied. I didn't cry, not at first. I just sat there stunned as the gavel struck wood. My lawyer squeezed my shoulder, whispering, "You did it." My parents rushed forward, hugging me tight. Margaret gasped like someone had ripped the ground out from under her. Charles muttered something about appealing as he stormed out. And Ethan just stayed seated, head in his hands. Outside the courthouse, sunlight felt different. Warmer, freer. Paparazzi shouted questions I ignored. My twins were safe. My future was mine again. But then, footsteps behind me. "Claire," Ethan said quietly. I turned, bracing for more chaos. Instead, he handed me a manila envelope. "I know I don't deserve your trust," he said, voice low. "But you should see this. It's everything. The trust documents, the deals my parents made behind our backs, even proof of what they tried to hide from me. Use it however you want. I'm done protecting them." I hesitated, then took the envelope. His eyes were red, but not from anger. "Claire, I don't expect forgiveness," he added. "I just want to be the father our boys deserve, even if I'm not part of your life." For the first time, I believed him. Weeks later, life looked different. The twins giggled in the backyard of my new rental house. A small place, but ours. My parents dropped by almost daily. My lawyer helped me set boundaries. Ethan could visit the kids, but the Lawsons were cut off completely. And Ethan, he got a job. A real one. No trust fund, no safety net. Just him, rebuilding from scratch. For once, it wasn't about proving himself to me, or to anyone. It was about becoming someone his kids could look up to. One evening, as I rocked the twins to sleep, I caught my reflection in the window. Tired, yes, but stronger, calmer. The woman staring back at me wasn't the same one who'd almost walked down the aisle for the wrong reasons. She was someone who'd fought, bled, and rebuilt her life. Not for revenge, but for love. Love for herself. Love for her children. Love for the peace she finally earned. And as I whispered goodnight to my sons, I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't the life I'd planned. But it was better. If this story pulled you in, imagine how many more twists we have waiting. Subscribe now and follow along, because sometimes the truth hiding behind closed doors is even darker or sweeter than we ever expect.